Hey, welcome to Fiberchats. I'm Caleb from Drowninginyarn, and I'm so excited to be here to chat with Irina Shar today. And we are about to get started with our interview. But before we do, don't forget to hit like if you're enjoying it while we are chatting. And if you haven't already, hit that little subscribe button so you see everything Irina posts in the future. She has so many interesting people to chat with on Fiberchats, and you're not going to want to miss an episode.
Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. And today my guest is Caleb from Drowninginyarns. And so you are my hero, basically. Like I've been binge watching all your podcast. And so the reason is you only started recently, right?
So I started July 25th, 2020.
So you just had 1 year anniversary.
So yeah, like last weekend or the weekend before.
Right. Congratulations.
Thank you
So
so much.
how did you decide to go on YouTube? How did you decide to start the channel?
Honestly, I was a little bored in quarantine. And I had seen people, I'd been trying to like grow my Instagram because I met so many people through Instagram. Once I started knitting, I met so many really amazing knitters and just amazing people who were very inspiring. And I realized that I was never going to be able to grow my Instagram that much just because I don't know, I'm not great at Instagram, but
Right.
I wanted to meet more people and I wanted to share what I know and what I'm passionate about. And I also have a film background. So I have, I've done a lot of things professionally, and film was not one of them, but my undergrad degree is in film. And so I wanted to use that kind of stuff that I was interested in whenever I was younger. Um, and so I figured if I could do something like YouTube where I could grow my community, reach more people, meet more people, and kind of nurture that interest that I used to have that I never did anything with, then why not? And so I was decided I was going to start my channel. I like got really nervous about it. I took a whole day to record my first like terrible episode and just and then I just kept going from there. That was a long
It actually was super cute because I was watching, like, I started from the first episode because I wanted to see how you change as the podcaster and how it was like, it's very, very interesting journey because, like, when you binge watch all the episodes, it becomes very obvious how you're becoming more comfortable and you're figuring out the equipment and all that stuff. Was
right.
that hard for you? Was that like the first few episodes? Was it hard? Just to figure out the setup and all of that.
Yes. And I'm very fortunate to have had that time. It sounds so weird to say because I was just sitting at home for obvious reasons during 2020. And so I
Right.
had all this time. And so I spent a lot of time on those early episodes. Like I would record and then sometimes I would re-record and then I would spend literally all weekend editing. Like, I mean, like 16 hours editing some of these, 5-minute videos. And so it was very frustrating and it was a little bit concerning, like how was I going to fit that into my life once, life got back to some version of normal. um but like you said, as time goes on, things start to fall into place. You kind of start to fall into like habits that are they're weird because they're good in that they save you time because you start using the same graphics and you stop switching up fonts, and so you just know what you're going to do whenever you're editing, and then you start saying the same things. And it's actually really comforting, I think, for people watching because they just like, once I start my video, you start noticing the things that I do, and if you're like a viewer, it's just like, oh, I'm settled in for an episode, versus like every episode being so wildly different and that being like stressful for me. And also you don't know what to expect whenever you come to me on my channel. So it was hard, but as time went on, things just kind of naturally fell into place, I think.
Right. So like like if you look at your episodes, some of them are you just chat about your life. Some of them you give a feedback on the lentil soup. Some of them you like demonstrate how to squeeze the water out of the socks, right? And then there is like yarn reviews, knitting book reviews. How do you decide on what you coming up with next?
So honestly, I come up with an idea that week. Sorry, you might hear Molly. Y'all are aware of my
Oh
dogs.
yeah, of course.
She's running around. But yeah, so I come up with ideas that week. And then I basically, in order to kind of make it a little bit easier on myself, came up with, or I didn't come up with this idea, but I had heard about people talking about content pillars. So essentially, like my content pillars are like get to know me content, so that that's like community building, then informational, so like tutorials and stuff, and then entertaining, so just lists of things but in a fun way, or the vlog. And that kind of helps me, like knowing that I have like these kind of three types of content that I want to always pepper in. And I always want to have some stuff for new knitters, some stuff for experienced knitters, and always be focusing on the projects that I'm actually knitting. So I always look back at my recent episodes, and if I realize like, oh, you did a yarn review last week, or you did this last week, then that's not going to happen this week, and it's not going to happen next week, because I want to make sure that it stays interesting and nothing is like overrepresented.
Right. So like you also had this few episodes where like experienced designers, including, Steven West, who one day I'm dreaming is gonna be a guest of the Fiberchats. If you ever wanna send him this interview, I'm sure it's gonna help. um, how do you get in touch with those designers? How, like, did you test knit for them, or did you develop friendship with them over Instagram? Like, how did idea for those tips came into play?
So Stephen West being in that was one of my very early videos, and that was just a product of the fact that I've met him in person, and not that long before, like it was towards the end of 2019, I think, because he came to Chicago. All the local yarn stores in Chicago put on his shawl show that he does. And so I'm part of a men's knitting group here, and we just happened to get to hang out with him one night. So after that, we had stayed in touch on Instagram. So that was just, he was just being very kind as like a friend. And then everybody else was just people that I had met through Instagram, honestly. And then I would reach out to them. So like Summer Lee was on my channel, Earth Tones Girl, Denise DeSantis, and then Mars from Hey Brownberry were just people that I had chatted with by reacting to their stories on Instagram. And then they were just so lovely once we started chatting. And so I just figured if I didn't ask, then they would never have an opportunity to say yes, and they could ignore me. And fortunately they didn't, because those are some of my favorite videos, because those people are just so inspirational, have so much knowledge to share.
It was actually like very interesting to watch it, because some of it was obvious and some of it was like super clever. Like,
but the things that I love about it, I'm sorry to cut you off. What I love about it is that the stuff that's obvious is obvious to like you and me maybe, but maybe not obvious to somebody else, because we all start from a different place. And like on that episode a couple of weeks ago, I was blocking my stuff and I was stepping on it, and somebody commented like, wow, how smart. I'm like, I am smart, like a lot of people do this, but you just maybe don't know that yet. And so now it's not clever or smart, because that's just part of that person's repertoire, but like what's clever to all of us is so different.
Right. So talking about the start of it, right? When did you learn how to knit? How did that happen?
So in 2019, I started knitting in February. I started crocheting just before that because I was meeting my friends at Michael's to do like a little craft project, and they were running very late. And so I just headed over to the yarn aisle just while I was making my way around, and was like, oh, I'm going to pick up a hook and some yarn. I don't know why. And I did. And then I was obsessed immediately. At that point, my boyfriend and I weren't living together. And so I would come over to his place every night, and I would literally carry giant bags of yarn because I wouldn't know what I would want to make. And he thought I was just nuts, but then I guess like a few months later, I started knitting just because I was looking online at all the stuff that you can make and looking at crochet patterns. and I tended to gravitate towards crochet for like amigurumi and stuff.
Right.
But as far as garments, knitting was where I saw things that I wanted to make and wear. So I called up the local yarn store here, and I signed up for a class. And then about a month later, he started knitting. And I think because we both do it, and because I'm a very like obsessive person, like I was just knitting every night, and then we would do it together. We would go to yarn stores together. So it made it really easy to become very immersed in it very quickly.
Right. So at what point did you start drowning in yarn?
So that was before I started knitting just as my Instagram account, because at that
No,
time
I don't mean that. I mean like your collection. When you start
oh,
feeling like you're actually drowning in yarn.
oh, just like as like a personal brand, I guess. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, I don't know. I felt like it started taking off whenever I started posting sweaters. Whenever I post sweaters, people always get excited. It's just too bad they take so long to knit. But I didn't really think of it as anything more than an Instagram account until I started my YouTube channel.
Right. And did you feel like by that time you had your collection was growing so large that you were like sort of drowning in yarn?
Um, I feel that way on YouTube now because it, which is nuts to think about, just because my subscriber count has grown so rapidly, particularly with like a couple videos. I have like 3 videos that are responsible for like over half my subscriber count. But just like looking at the number of subscribers that I have make me feel like it's like an actual thing that is like bigger than me. Just in terms of like, I don't know, providing entertainment or whatever. So I guess as my YouTube started taking off, that's when it started to feel more like a thing.
Right. So like what was the first video that dramatically increased your subscriber base?
Well, actually, it was the grocery girls that did it because it was very early. I think I had like 5 or 6 videos. I can't remember exactly, but I was just working. I worked from home,
Right.
sitting on the couch working, and one of my friends, I think Zach Stout actually, um, messaged me on Instagram and was like, "The grocery girls are talking about you right now." And so I tuned into their live while I was sitting on the couch, just put it on the TV, and they were like, Jody was holding up her phone, like, it's like, oh, I just saw him on YouTube and he only has 700 subscribers. Like, let's show him some love. And then within like a day or two, it jumped to like 1,700 subscribers. And
Okay.
so from there, it just kept growing pretty steadily. And there have been lulls where it just totally dies out. But that's just part of YouTube. I'm learning.
Right. Do you ever feel like I was talking like I was interviewing another person and they were saying how there's like this imposter syndrome. Do you ever feel like you are not good enough for this thing? Like, why do these people even listen to me? Like, I'm not an expert. I just started to knit a couple years ago. What do I know? Like, do you ever get that feeling?
I have imposter syndrome in every aspect of my life, and I kind of just learned that I think we all do. Which, as far as knitting goes, and especially as far as like expertise, people listen to me because I decided to start talking. And I think if anybody decides to start talking and they show up enough and they do it consistently, people will listen. So I kind of absolved myself of the need to feel like an expert, as
Right.
long as my like driving force for my videos is always to respect people's time. And part of that is to always make sure when people show up, they leave with something that they maybe didn't have when they got there. So that may just be having been entertained for 5 minutes, but hopefully I impart some little knowledge. I picked up some tip. So as long as I do that, I don't think I have to be an expert to do that. And so I kind of like let myself off the hook on being an expert. And but I still feel like an imposter for sure.
Like, do you ever get this feeling that, like, have you ever caught yourself saying something and being sure about it, only to figure out later that it wasn't actually 100% the case?
Yes.
Because I
definitely.
just had the same moment like a week ago where, I've been knitting Shetland lace for 3 years and I've been grafting it certain way. And I was
Uh-huh.
very comfortable with grafting and nobody ever commenting on my grafting. I mean, it's not a comfortable process, but like I did my grafting, right? And nobody ever said anything about it. And then a week ago, I figured out that I was doing it all wrong for
No.
all those 3 years, and that there is some different. So, like with my tension, it's not very visible because I'm a very loose knitter. But like
Okay.
if you did it the very right way, that's not the way I was doing it. Do you
Hey,
have
your way worked for you, so it's not wrong, I guess.
right? It's just not very right.
No, yeah, I've had those things, and sometimes though it's just like I make sure to always like caveat things with like just because I do something some way doesn't make it right. It's just how I do it, and I'm sure I do plenty of things that aren't right, but they work for me, and as long as I'm clear on that, I am really weird about doing tutorials. Like I've done a few just on some things that I like doing. Like I did uh, a very quick combination knitting tutorial that
Right.
um, because it's what I do all the time. So I felt confident. But there's other things that I've started tutorials on and just totally scrapped it because exactly what you're saying. I just like the level of confidence for me to put myself out there in that case as an expert, right? Because I'm like, here's how you do it step by step. That I just don't have that level of confidence, and I just stop.
Right. So when you need multiple projects at the same time, right? You don't work on one project. How do you decide on like how many VIPs you have? Like,
I let my stress guide me. I'm a very stressed out person all the time. So if my projects start to add to that stress, then there's too many of them. And generally speaking, that's around 3 projects. Like 3 things, as long as I have something that's really mindless, then that's probably the right number. Um,
so like
but
when you pick up those three, is it gonna be like sweater, hat, and socks, or is it gonna be like 3 pairs of socks?
so usually it's at least usually 1 pair of socks, sometimes 2. And then the other thing varies. Like right now, I have more projects than I care to. Um, I think I have um, 5. I just cast on a 6th, but I that one's sort of like I'm getting the privilege to preview it, so I'm just stopping everything else to do that. But generally, I'll have like a shawl or a sweater, I think, and like maybe 1 or 2 pairs of socks. And I don't actually knit that many hats, even though I feel like I have so many. But I like to have a big project that I can feel like I sink my teeth into.
Right. So talking about stress, I watched one of your episodes that was basically talking about knitting as a form of self-care. And to me, it was like you were very raw, very open, like very emotional, talking about it. And somehow, like, I've been going through the period of time now where I can't find that knitting motivation, and it's like I committed to some project that like stressing me out. How do you deal with it? How do you find that knitting mojo? How do you find that inner peace, that ability to continue, like not to stress over it?
Sometimes it's hard, especially now. I feel like beholden to other people to like finish things, which is completely self imposed. Like nobody's telling me to knit anything. And I don't think anybody would care if I finished anything I ever knit. But I feel like this drive to keep doing it. But I think, especially in the past, whenever I've had issues with it, um, I just try to just like set something aside if it's not like serving me, which isn't always easy if you're test knitting or you're committed because you've told somebody you'll do it. But if it's just a project that I'm knitting and I'm not like it's causing me stress, it's not fun, it's not that self-care moment that I need, then I'll just stop knitting on it and I'll cast on something really simple just to keep my hands moving. For me, I need like keeping my hands moving while I'm watching TV and stuff helps. Like that feeling of being productive, but being productive in like the sense of like making a thing, which I'm sure we all share. Like there's something about that I need. And So I'll just go to like the simplest form of how I can achieve that, and just do that until it comes back, until knitting like that gorgeous thing behind you feels like that thing you want to do. Because sometimes that might stress you out, because there's a lot of mental um, like a lot of like mental power that goes into something like that, right? Paying attention to tracking and all that. But knitting like the simplest pair of socks for me takes no mental power. So I go to that and I just stay in that space until I feel ready to go back to something more complex.
Want to
That's
hear something funny? This thing stresses me much less than a pair of socks. I don't know why I have this phobia of socks. Like I'm terrified of socks. So maybe one day you'll hold my hand and you'll guide me through a pair of socks.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, for sure. That's so beautiful. I can't even imagine. I don't know if I could make that. So I'm very impressed that that for you is your like self-care kind of knitting. But
That's
if
my
that's for you, then there you go.
You mentioned in one of your episodes about test knitting and how like you did this questionnaire on Instagram and ask people what they like about test knitting and what they dislike about test knitting. And some of those things were even the same. Like the
Yeah.
fact that there was a deadline for test knitting was stressing some people out, and some people actually liked it
Mhm.
and enjoyed the fact that there was something to that they had to be like on their toes. Um, how do you do test knitting? Do you love test knitting? What's your relationship with test knitting?
I do test knit every now and then. I think in the beginning, I would just test knit whatever, because it felt like such an opportunity, and it felt like um, I felt like I was chosen, which felt, it was a cool feeling. But then I realized that for me, I was one of those people where the deadline is not a motivator. I do well under pressure, but I tend to procrastinate, and then I create these situations where I'm like, oh no, I got to do this. I do it in all aspects of my life. So I realized with test knitting that I was putting myself in this position to be stressed more than I need to be. So it's better for me if I test knit only if I really love something and I really want to make that thing, and I'm going to make it no matter what. So if
Difficult, like now that like you're getting to meet more and more people through your YouTube channel, I'm sure you're being approached all the time to test knit something and
not,
really.
yeah, nobody's asked me to in a while, which is probably for the best because I don't have time.
Right.
You would think that, but no. So it's the test knitting that I've done recently has been for people that I've test knit for before. And so they'll send out their calls. A lot of times whenever you test knit, I'm sure you know this, but maybe not everybody does. But after you test knit, if you're a good test knitter, I guess, then they'll ask you if you want to test knit when they have something else kind of as a priority. You get priority. So I've like all the test knits that I've done recently have been through that. And then if I have the time at that time, I'll do it, because those are generally designers I love.
Right. Do you ever ask yourself, like, what would happen if you just stop doing what you're doing tomorrow? Like, who would miss you? Who is that crowd that supports you so much? And what would happen? Like, would people come look for you?
I do ask myself that all the time, and I worry about it because there's been weekends where I haven't posted a video. I try to post every week because I've heard YouTube likes that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, because I miss some weeks and the world doesn't fall apart, but it feels like it because I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I'm having so much fun doing this, and I really, really enjoy filming the yarn, and I really enjoy editing the videos and playing with cameras. I just bought another camera yesterday, so hopefully y'all are going to see better visuals from me in the future. And I want an outlet for that along with my knitting. And if I stop, then what happens? And like, or if I stop for some period of time and come back, are people going to be there to watch? I worry about that. So that is a weird aspect of it, because it is definitely, I've read a lot about creator burnout, because you have this, I have, and I've got other people have this like belief that if you take a break, then people will stop showing up. And so that like fear just causes you to keep creating, whether you have something to make or not, and whether you have the time or not. And so that's something to be very cognizant of. And it's very funny that you asked that question, because I worry about that all the time.
Well, because I started to worry about it, but like in a different context, because I was interviewing basically like somehow it caught up like really fast and a lot of people wanted to be interviewed. And
Mhm.
I was so excited that people want to be interviewed that I was booking like left and right. And then suddenly I had 5 interviews per week. And I was like, are people actually sick and tired of watching me, and my interviews? So it's like you start asking yourself, like, what's not enough and what's too much, and how much of it is coming from us and how much of it is people actually caring.
I think it's a lot of self-imposed because what you're doing is so amazing, but it's also fear-inducing because you're putting yourself out there. Even though you're interviewing people, you're putting yourself out there. And so, at least for me in that situation, it it brings up a lot of anxieties, and then you end up like second guessing yourself a lot. Um, and I've had to realize like I just need to do what feels right then, and then it's going to be fine. If I mess up this week, it doesn't mean I can't recover next week or the week after. Like if a video doesn't get views this week, it doesn't mean anything about next week. So
Do you remember your first dislike?
I don't remember my first dislike, but I do. I remember, I feel like I remember some of my earlier negative comments because the dislikes, I feel like only mean that it's like disliking something on Netflix. It doesn't mean you don't like it because you probably haven't seen it. It means that you just don't want more of that, which
But
is
do you
like
think
neutral.
even that, do you think like I'm hoping that like when I'm getting a dislike, it's for the like poor connection that I'm getting because it's on Zoom? That's my
It could be.
right.
I really think dislikes are neutral on YouTube. I think it just means, it doesn't mean they dislike it. It just means they're like thumbs up means like YouTube, show me more. Dislike just means, to me, this is how I think about it for my own sanity. It just means that they're fine with or without it. Like they could take it or leave it.
Okay. So what
That's how.
was the negative comment that you remember?
Oh, so the earliest ones were about my editing. I would spend all weekend editing videos, and hopefully I've gotten better. But like people would be like, "Good video. I hope you can improve on your editing." And I'm like, I know that that's coming from a place of like
Here.
like they're just trying to be nice, but it really stung at the time. And as I've had more viewers, people stop saying like things that are nice, but maybe um, aren't received in a kind way, which is I think what was happening. I was receiving a comment with my own context, whether it was there or not. Now I get comments like people will come to my piercings. Somebody told me that the hog ring in my nose made their eyes water, and like I woke up and that was the first thing I read like a few weeks ago, and it just like makes your stomach drop, But then you have to realize like who cares? Like they're one of literally thousands of people. Like who cares? But you kind of care in those moments. You just have to let it go. I don't
You know what? It's funny because so a friend of mine and I recently organized this Facebook group, and we said we want only one rule: you have to be nice, like no bullying, no meanness. And it doesn't come that natural to people. Like there is still situations when like there is this catty fights over some like ridiculous things, and I was like, I don't understand, because to me, it's like if I see something that I'm not particularly smitten with, I'll just keep on scrolling. It's like I'm not gonna like waste my time in sitting and typing this mean comment. So sometimes I just don't get like what possesses people to do that kind of thing.
I I am the same way as you, and I have that same question. And I forget who I saw on Instagram. It was somebody in the yarn community, and in knitting community was basically like responded to a negative comment on their post with like, you don't need to announce your exit. And that's like a perfect way to put it, right? Like if
Right.
I don't like a video, I just leave. Like there's millions of videos on YouTube, and there's cable, or there's, I can read a book. Like I don't need to like bring somebody down.
Right.
Um, but I really I don't know. I feel like not everybody thinks that way. And like it takes all kinds, right? Like there's got to be room for those people too. So if
Yes.
we're putting ourselves out there, we just have to have thicker skin, I guess.
Right. Do you remember the comment that made you feel the best about making the decision to do the YouTube?
Um, So the video that you mentioned about self-care and like the mindful aspects of knitting, I guess, and I don't watch that video. I've gotten so used to watching myself. I used to hate seeing myself or hearing myself. I hate being on camera. Even now I hate it, but I just don't care anymore because I just sit and watch myself for hours at a time while I edit. But that video I won't watch because it just I'm afraid that I'll watch it and then like regret it. But I don't regret it because the comments on that one where people say that it like they heard something that they resonate with, that resonates with them, like that I think is the most important and the most fulfilling, right? Like just getting to connect with people and maybe put into words in some way something that they thought or didn't know how to say or didn't have anybody to share it with or anybody who would understand. That I think is the coolest part. And that video will every now and then get comments, and so that kind of just keeps popping up, which is
I must confess that that was the video after which I started writing to all the friends I knew we have in common, telling them to introduce us so I could interview you. It was after that video because I watched it and it was like so raw and so open and so like honest, that and it really resonated. So I was like, okay, I have to interview him.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you reached out too. Yeah, no, I try to, I don't know, we'll see if a video like that ever happens again, but I try to always be me and like, I mean, obviously I'm a version of me, right? Because I'm editing myself,
Right.
but I try to be a real version of me, and that video is a part of that. So we'll see if I'll ever have one that raw again. If I ever feel the way that I felt then and felt like sharing.
Right. Um, so some of the episodes your boyfriend is joining you. Have you ever considered like doing all the episodes together? Like why sometimes he's with you and sometimes he's not? It's just because the schedule, or is there like other reasons?
No, we're actually together all of the time because we both work from home now. So he could always do it, but he doesn't like doing it really. He doesn't like being on camera. And so now he just joins me for live episodes because they're more of like podcasts.
Right.
And he's a amazing knitter and he makes, I think a lot of our choices are similar, but I think you can definitely see the difference. And like, I think it's really good to have his perspective. And people have really responded to Brian. Like people have liked Brian in the comments. So I try to get him to come on and I've got him to commit to live episodes, but the rest of it, I don't think he sees it as like my thing.
Right.
And so he doesn't really have an interest, I think, in doing it and like putting in all that effort, but
So
he likes being live.
right. So when you first like were thinking about starting it, right? You probably talked to him about it, like I have this idea, what do you think? Was he very supportive from the start? Is there like ever time when he's like, can't we just forget this week and let's go out because we never get to go out? You edit all the time. Like, does he ever complain about you spending too much time on YouTube?
No, he's like, I'm a very difficult person and he like is very good to me and is very like kind and supportive. And I feel very lucky because like you mentioned, like there are definitely days where I am just sitting at home editing all day and he doesn't ever complain. And especially in some of those earlier weeks, whenever I would be editing all Saturday and all Sunday and we didn't leave the house. And I mean, there was nothing to go do, but he likes to get out and like he likes to just walk around and stuff. And I'm not that person. I would always kind of be like, are you sure you're not upset? Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure you're fine with doing this? And he was always like, yeah, it's important to you, do it. And so I've been very fortunate in that respect.
I have a question about your dogs. So you have
Yes.
two, and Molly is very energetic and she wants to go out. And the second dog, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of
Right.
Riley. So he's more of a homebody. He likes to be on
So,
the sofa, right?
yeah, he's laying right there right now. He hasn't moved in hours. So
Do you
it's where
feel
he
like
was.
it's that the personality of the dogs match you and your boyfriend's personalities because he's more outgoing and you are more homebody?
Yes, 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 yes. That's so funny that you said that. So I adopted Riley with my ex in Texas. So I'm from Houston. And so Riley came with me from Houston and he's just the sweetest, calmest, like he gets mad sometimes, but only if you really push him. And he's the Brian. And I am very much like a homebody, except whenever I get excited about something, I'm like excited about that thing and excitable. And I'm Molly. But Molly like tends to like gravitate towards me. And then Riley, even though I've had Riley for years before I ever met Brian, is like Brian's best friend. Like he treats me like his dad. Like he listens to me and he won't listen to Brian, but he won't like cuddle with me. And he'll like go to the couch and sit with Brian and put his head on Brian's lap and stuff. So we're our dogs.
Are they getting along together? The
They
two
didn't
dogs?
at first, but they do now. So we've had Molly for maybe 2 years, and she just like from the minute she came into the house was just like crazy, and it was concerning for a little while because she was just nuts. But as like we've all learned to live together, it's they started to like each other and they'll cuddle on the couch together, Molly and Riley, and like she stopped doing all the destructive things that she would do at first, and so it's
Right.
very much settled down and it's very much worked out just the way it was supposed to.
And so now you in your new home, right? You just recently moved.
In
Congratulations.
October. Thank you.
How do you organize your yarn? Do you have like a special room for that? And do you have a system of organization for that?
No. I, I have some yarn above my closet, which I showed in a vlog episode recently. And that's sort of a new thing because above the closet, there's just like I always, it's like a shelf. Um, so that's where I put it all now. But it used to be under my couch. But there's no organizational system, and Brian doesn't really stash, even though he knits just as much as I do. He's much better about spending the money on like the yarn that counts because it's what he's knitting with. So, for instance, I've always been afraid to like knit a spin cycle sweater because I'm like, or something with spin cycle through the whole body because I'm like, that's a lot of money, and I already spent a bunch of money on yarn. But he doesn't have to second guess it because he hasn't been buying yarn he's probably never going to knit, you know. So his yarn stashes like in that, like he can put it in like a cube.
Right. So when you go to the yarn store, do you plan what you're gonna buy? Do you, or like when you did the yarn crawl together, was there something like you took home and we're gonna go and look for this and that project, or you go and you just like let your eyes guide you?
More of the latter, more of the letting my eyes guide me. But where they always land is sock yarn because I feel like sock yarn, you can always, if you have one skein, you can always do something with it. You can always knit socks or hold it double and knit a hat or mittens or something.
Right.
But if you have one skein of worsted weight, then you're a little more in trouble. Like you're so limited. So lately, I've been trying to plan. So we went to a woolen company, which is a big like 6,000 square foot yarn store out of the city. We rented a car and went there, and I just was so overwhelmed is not the word, but like I started to stress myself out because I was like, I don't have time to knit like just random stuff. And I just keep buying yarn and I'm just spending money on yarn. So I decided to pick a project after we got there. And then I bought yarn for that project. So, and I casted it on too. So I decided I was going to knit Brioche Delicious by Andrea Mowry because I
Mhm.
love her and all of her things. And so I bought yarn for that. But then we went to a yarn store yesterday and I brought home more sock yarn. So
So you're trying to be more mindful of buying yarn, but it's not always working.
it's hard, right? It's just so pretty and there's so much possibility whenever you see a pretty skein. It's just like your mind starts to think of all the things it could be, and so then it becomes so easy to buy it even though you don't need it. I
Right.
don't know.
Well, now that you like, when since you started the channel, right, and you're meeting all these new people, new knitters, and I'm sure you're meeting all these amazing yarn dyers, does it become more difficult for you to choose who you're gonna buy from?
um so I try to still just buy whenever I see something that I want, because I don't want to buy things just to buy them or just so that I can say that I bought from somebody, because I don't, I guess I have in the back of my mind that if I'm showing things like on my channel, for instance, like I need to make sure that people trust me, and they're not going to trust me if I'm just showing them things to show them things.
Right.
Like anything that I show is because I actually like it and I wanted it and I see possibility there. But I try to be mindful of the voices that I'm like amplifying, I guess, or like people that I'm talking about, because I don't want to amplify the wrong voices or whatever. I try to make sure that I'm like only talking about people whose like values I share or agree with. For instance, like that's something that's important to me, and that I'm just mindful of who the people are making the things, I guess.
Right. Um, I actually really liked your episode that I watched on one skein, um,
Oh,
like one skein wonder, basically, like what can you make with one skein of different kind of yarn? How did you come up with that idea? Because that was brilliant.
somebody commented it in my video. So on my birthday, I skipped that week and of course stressed about it. And then I posted about it in my community tab on Instagram. Every now and then I'll post questions, and I was like, just I'm taking the weekend to relax, but let me know if there's something that you want to see from me in the future. And somebody said that video. So I just the next week I don't think I had an idea. And so I just was like, that was a really good idea. And so then I just put a call out on my Instagram stories for suggestions.
Right.
And my Instagram friends always come through with a lot of really good suggestions. So
Right. No, you have like very active community there because they always give you some ideas there, right?
yeah, I'm very fortunate. People love to talk about what they love to do, you know. So if you're asking questions about like what patterns did you have fun knitting, or like whatever, I feel like people just love to talk about it. And a lot of people don't have anybody to talk about these things within their day-to-day life. So
Right. Do you ever get feeling that like people talk to you either like through Instagram or like in the comments that they feel like they know you, like that you're part of their family and you have no idea who they are? Like, do you get that a lot?
yeah, yeah, I do. Recently, especially, I'll get that. But I think it's nice that, you know, people feel like they know me, because I hope I'm showing them like a real version of me. So if they feel like they know me, then I'm doing what I'm trying to do right, I guess. It's just weird because sometimes I don't know them yet, but I've met a lot of people that way and gotten to know them. And I haven't really met anybody in person because for obvious reasons, but I feel like I probably will have made some real life friends from all this, just from people reaching out and saying, you know, I liked what you did, and then me just chatting with them after that.
Right. You know, like in Rhinebeck, I was there in 2019, and they have this podcaster hill
Mhm.
where all the YouTube podcasters come out with their sign and they meet their fans. Have you like ever envisioned yourself doing something like that, like meeting with your 22,000 subscribers somewhere?
So I was watching your episode with Noodles at the Ready, and I think that's where I learned that this was a thing. And I remember watching it and thinking like, I don't know if I could imagine myself doing that, because I just would feel so weird. I don't know. But then I was at a local yarn store here called Sister Arts, which is, I'm fortunate to live within walking distance of two local yarn stores.
Right.
And I say walking distance, but it's like 2 miles, but I walk there. So um that somebody asked for a picture with me, which was just wild. Like I I was like, sure. But I'm just like a person just shopping for yarn. But I was more than happy to, because it was just the fact that somebody watched my stuff and liked it and appreciated meant that I was doing something right. And so it was really cool. So I guess, yeah, I could see myself going with the sign on the hill, just because like it would be really nice to meet some of the people that presumably I've been chatting with or seeing comments from. It would be kind of cool. I don't know.
No, because when I asked Kevin and Ray the same thing, I was like, have you ever had that celebrity moment when somebody was like asking for your autograph and they were like totally bewildered by idea, you know, like.
Yeah.
But then I talked to a lady who is like, who is their subscriber, who subscribed later to my channel. And
Mhm.
she said that she drove all the way from Massachusetts just to meet them with like a bunch of her friends for the Knit in Public Day. She's like,
Oh,
we drove all the way from Massachusetts to see them knit in public. So I guess they like, you know, they didn't think of that as a celebrity moment, but it was.
yeah, 100%. I mean, if we lived close by, Brian and I would have done that, because we every fortnight Brian and I turn on Needles at the Ready, and like it'll be like, because we stay up way too late and then we'll knit, so it'll be like midnight and we put on Needles at the Ready and watch it and knit, and like, so I would feel like very like, what's the word, whenever you meet a celebrity, I can't think of the word, but like starstruck. I would feel starstruck if I met them, you know, because
I had that feeling because when I was at Rhinebeck, I mean, I basically at that point it was my very first knitting festival. I never been to one, and I mean, I've seen like some of the YouTube channels that have to do with knitting, and to see them there live, you know, like I mean, I saw like Stephen West working and all the girls running after him, like screaming for a selfie, and like Andrea Maury, you know, and it's like everybody who was like who I saw somewhere. So I felt like it was red carpet or something, you know, like
and people are going to feel that way when they see you.
like I can't think of that. I can't imagine. That would be so bizarre.
You have like 20,000 followers on Instagram. So
Yeah,
did you go to the podcast hill?
I have no idea how that happened. It just like somehow like happened over the COVID, you know. I guess I spend way too much time on Instagram introducing myself to random people, random
I
knitters.
mean, honestly, though, like, so whenever I did the test knitting episode, people were like, how do you find test knitting opportunities? And then I'll have other people who will say like, oh, I don't know anybody in my life who knits. And that's not my situation. I'm very fortunate to have friends that I knit with here. But a lot of the people that I talked to about knitting, I met on Instagram, and like Instagram isn't always great. I mean, it's like from Facebook, right? Like they've
Right.
got their problems, but it's such an amazing tool for building community. And it's such an amazing tool for finding people who enjoy things that you enjoy. And so I don't know. I think like, do we all spend too much time on our phones? Sure. But like, I don't feel bad whenever I'm
No, I
on it.
feel like honestly, like I feel like it made such a difference. Like it made all the difference for me in 2020, just because I didn't feel isolated. I didn't feel alone. In actuality, like I've met so many interesting people who I would never meet otherwise, and it was so inspirational. And I got to like learn so many new things, try so many new knitting techniques, buy like yarn that I didn't know existed just because of the Instagram. Like it was such a source of inspiration. And
Yeah.
also, like interestingly, when we opened that group on Facebook, the idea behind it was like, so the friend of mine who opened it, David Van de Kamp, so he was a budding new designer,
Mm-hmm.
and he felt it was like very difficult to promote himself anywhere on Facebook just because like all the groups have these rules against self-promotion. It's
Yeah.
like you banned immediately, like you know, excommunicated from the group as soon as you say like I wrote a pattern, you know. So we wanted to like open a group for him basically so he can. I'm sorry, my cat decided to get into the box suddenly. It's always the animals. So we wanted to open a group where he could post his patterns without like feeling like he's breaking some rules, right? And then we start inviting all the indie dyers, other designers, knitters into the group. And suddenly there was all these like alliances were being built. So like the designers were posting the test calls. The people who like always wanted to test suddenly saw the opportunities to test. The dyers were like getting into some deals with designers. So it's like it became this whole community building thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of that is so, and unless you happen upon it on the internet, like how would you ever know how to test it or where to find an indie dyer to work with? So it's cool that you have that community now, and that Instagram can provide that as well, but also there are places on Facebook like y'all's group. That's awesome.
Right, right. Um, so like when you and your boyfriend both knit, have you ever knitted the same exact thing at the same exact time? Or do you like inspire each other with your different projects?
So we have knit the same thing at the same time. We recently knit the Hansmeier hat with Jared Flood in Rancho 3 at the same time. Or maybe I knit it and then he knit it immediately after because he was in the middle of a project. Um, and he tends to not have quite as many projects like actively going. But we mostly knit different things. We'll sometimes be like, oh, I really like that thing, I'm going to make it. but I don't think we've ever like simultaneously knit the same thing, like gives a conscious choice.
Right. Do you wear your knitwear like everywhere you go?
No, because I wear my hats and mittens because so as I mentioned, I'm from Texas. I moved here and I had never seen snow before, like never seen real snow until I moved to Chicago. And so my first winter here was 2017, I think, or 16. And I bought like 10 different pairs of gloves because nothing kept my hands warm. And then I realized like, oh, mittens are where it's at because my little fingers can share a warmth. So I wear my mittens all the time, and I love to knit mittens. And I wear my like shawls and scarves a lot. But sweaters, I didn't start knitting sweaters until it was sometime in 2019. And then at that point, I had really only knit like two. So I wore those two a couple times during the winter of 2019. And then last winter, I had nowhere to go. So I didn't wear them at all. I would put them on to film videos, and that was basically it. So I'm very excited this winter to be able to, like, people are gonna be tired of seeing me in like the same, 10 sweaters, but I do not care because I'm so excited.
Um, have you ever had any issues knitting in public or like wearing your knitwear where somebody would comment on anything negatively or positively?
I've had people compliment me, usually in like in a knitting space, right? Like at a yarn store or whatever, they'll just like say they like something that I made. But I've never had anybody say anything weird. And I'm not afraid to knit in public. I actually was at a bachelorette party um, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was in a wedding, and I don't drink, so I'm at this party, and it was a burlesque show, and so it was like midnight, and we're waiting for this thing to start, and all my friends are drinking, and I'm like having water, and I was knitting. Like I was just sitting there knitting, and I'm participating, and not like I'm fully present, but like it's not a space that I'm super comfortable in because I don't go to bars and stuff. So I was just like, this is my like little comfort blanket. So I'm gonna like knit here and like work on this hat. And people did not even care,
Right.
which
So
is
do
cool.
you have like some sort of lighting device to see your knitting?
No, so I actually did drop a stitch, and it was problematic for a second until I think I forget at some point whoever I was talking to got up and left. So then I was able to get out my phone and get some light to fix it.
When you knit, do you look at your knitting all the time or can you watch TV and knit?
I'll watch TV and knit, but we don't tend to watch things that require a lot of like
No
attention.
subtitles.
No, no subtitles. We have subtitles on
But
because
like no foreign
there's
movies where you need to read the
nothing foreign, nothing in another language, and nothing that I like really want to watch. So then the shows that I really, really want to watch, like I never finished Scandal because I really, really wanted to watch it. And then I started knitting, and then because I wasn't watching it whenever it was on. And then I just stopped because I was like, I really want to pay attention, but I also really want to knit, and those things aren't compatible for me. So I just don't watch it. I'd rather knit. But there are things that I can knit without looking, and I do often knit without looking. But a lot of time I watch what I'm knitting, just like whenever I'm sitting around at home or whatever. It's not unless I'm talking to somebody a lot that I'll knit and just not look at it.
right. Um, do you ever, or like since you started to knit, right? Have there been days when you haven't knitted anything?
Yes, and I hate them. And every night that I don't knit, I always am like, Brian, I didn't knit today. And he'll say the same thing. We both, I don't know why, it's like I don't feel right unless I like at least did a few stitches.
Well, you know what, how I feel? I feel like I started knitting 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I feel like I could have started knitting when I was like 7 or 8, right? And I feel like I wasted so many years not knitting that now it's just like every day not knitted is like wasted.
Right? And
I have
do
to
you ever
catch up.
feel like you want to see the finished project? Are you a project or a process knitter? I guess is the first question.
Uh, like I enjoyed the process, but I also like I can only need one thing at the time. If I need two things at the time, it stresses me out. Like it just freaks me out. Like I mean, right now, for example, right, I agreed to do this like probably the most complicated Shetland lace shawl I have ever attempted, and it's with 4,000 meters per 100 grams
Oh,
gossamer yarn.
wow.
You can't see the damn thing. It's just like it's just there, you have to trust the fact that it's there, but it's like invisible. And it's on 1.75 millimeter needles, so it's like you're knitting on toothpicks with air. And so I agreed to that, and then it was like sort of I had a flood in my basement. We had construction, like waterproofing the whole backyard, so there was like people working right outside of my window where I usually knit, so it was like all stressing me out. So I agreed to another test knit, which was like very simple worsted weight shawl. But the fact that like I still have that test knit waiting for me like totally stresses me out, even though the designer was like, it's summer, I understand there is no deadline, like don't let it get to you. It gets to me.
So do you try to get at least a couple stitches, or is
i,
that hard to get a few stitches, or do you need to like finish a row?
I need to finish a row, and it's 500 stitches per row, so it's like
You need time.
I need half an hour at least to do one row. um,
Mm.
so it's like I try. So what I try to do nowadays, the construction people don't get here until 8:30 or 9, so I try to get at 6 and just like get a couple hours of knitting in the morning before anybody interferes with it.
That's smart. Get it out of the way, yeah, because I end up it'll be late, and then I'm like, it's like I need to go to sleep because I have a job to do in the morning, and it's too late. But I'm not a morning person, so but getting up early and doing it, that's smart.
And you also get some knitting during lunch break, right?
I do, yeah. I know. So I'm a programmer, and there'll be times during the day where I'm in a meeting that doesn't require me to like be actively doing anything. I need to listen and take notes every now and then. So I'll knit during that because we don't ever have our cameras on. And even I've done one of these numbers, where I'm like this and like my hands are moving, but I'm just trying to be still and knit that way. But I definitely knit during lunch. Sometimes I work on my videos during lunch. Like a lot of times I'll record during lunch. Um, but I try to knit during lunch because it just is a nice way to break up the day for me.
Right. So like what are you working on now, and what's your plans for like the closest podcast? I know you just released one yesterday, right? Or today. Yeah. So like do you already like as soon as one released you start planning the next one?
I should. I should have an idea, and I should like batch create, like make more than one at a time so that I can buy myself weeks off or whatever, but I do not. So no. I usually start like thinking of an idea like Tuesday rolls around and I'm like, oh, I need to like have an idea. And then Wednesday rolls around and I'm like, oh, it'd be best if I record today, and then I don't record till Thursday, and then I'm editing Friday and Saturday. So I don't know. But I have projects that I'm working on, and one of them so I was very fortunate, and Brooklyn Tweed sent me some of their new yarn that's releasing this month on the 18th, I think. And so I'm knitting a sweater in that. So I decided I'm going to put everything aside and knit on that. So maybe I'm not going to have that sweater done this next week, but the week after that, I'll probably show you all that sweater. I'm looking over here because I have the swatch. I was working on the swatch whenever.
Oh, that's gorgeous color.
Oh, the colors are amazing.
Right.
But no, I don't know what next week will be.
Do you have any advice for the budding YouTubers like me?
Consistency. Honestly, I felt like if I wasn't like uploading like 3 times a week, which it was never going to be a thing that I could do, then I was never going to be able to grow on YouTube. But I realized that like if you can make one good video a week and just be consistent about that, then that's really all you need to do. And then the other thing was just to be consistent, because I think if you're consistent and you do pay attention to the like YouTube SEO stuff, right? Like have a good thumbnail, have a good title, have a searchable description, then just showing up week after week, people will pay attention. And also, I think it's really great. Like on Instagram, which I need Instagram advice from you, but I've realized that Instagram is so like I forget what the word is. It just once you post something, it goes away after like 48 hours.
Right.
People can't search for content really very well. But YouTube, people can search for your stuff from now until forever.
Right.
So if you pay attention to making sure that they can find you when they're looking for you, then they'll show up. And part of that is just being consistent, because then the algorithm knows that you're alive, I guess, and can like put you in front of people. But it's also, yeah, no, I think what you're doing is so cool, and I think people are showing up already, and they're going to continue to show up, because it's so interesting to meet people doing something that you like, and that's not always easy. And so this way we get to meet them like vicariously through you, so it's really cool.
And I also like, I find it very interesting that like everybody who I'm interviewing, we all have our insecurities, we all have our moments of doubt, we all have our like artistic blocks, and we all get inspired by each other, you know. So I feel like that's part of the magic of these interviews, that I get to see and feel normal, you know, feel like I'm not the only one and other people struggle with the same thing and get inspired the same way, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's cool too, because sometimes I feel like a weirdo. Like I feel like, why do I care so much about this? Like sometimes I just feel weird, because I just love to knit. Like I love to knit and I love yarn. And it doesn't feel normal until I realize that other people like care about it as much as I do. And then I'm like, oh, those are my people. Like my friends are all lovely, and they like will send me knitting stuff, but they don't care. They just care to see me happy, which is really cool. But it's really nice to be able to talk about some of this stuff with people who care about it as much as I do. And
Right.
so it's cool to be able to do that a little bit through YouTube, through what you're doing, to just like meet more people who care as much as I do. It's cool.
Right. Well, thank you so very much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed our chat, and I hope we'll stay in touch.
Yes, and thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Thank you.